Good morning, I'm Charlotte. Welcome to Wake Up Well. Today is the 1st of December and we're right towards the beginning of the Advent period as we wait and we look forward to Christmas Day itself. This morning we're going to read a short passage from Isaiah 52, verses 7 to 9. And it says this: "How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of the messenger who bring good news. The good news of peace and salvation, the news that the God of Israel reigns. The watchmen shout and sing with joy, for before their very eyes they see the Lord returning to Jerusalem. Let the ruins of Jerusalem break into joyful song, for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem." The passage is so interesting because it's 3 verses, each split into a different part. And the 3 parts of that passage look at 3 different roles within an ancient city. So first of all, in verse 7, you have talk of a messenger. These would have been people who would have been sent out from the city to go and to get news of things happening elsewhere and to bring it back to the city itself, the messenger. And then in verse 8, you have the watchmen. And these would have been people who would have stood on the walls of a city at a really good vantage point, looking out at what they could see, perhaps dangers, perhaps the messengers returning, so they could feed that back to the city as quickly as it became into sightline. And then finally in verse 9, you have the ruins of Jerusalem, the people themselves gathering together. And this would have been the core, the community, the people that made up the city of Jerusalem. So you have messenger, you have watchman, and then you have the city, the body, the people themselves. And in this passage, those 3 roles are used to describe roles as we think about what God is doing within the world today, the works of God, and the role that people might play in that. And so first of all, you have the messenger, the people who bring good news. It says here, who bring good news of peace and salvation, those who share the good news about God and about Jesus. Secondly, then you have watchmen, people who look out to what God is doing, who reflect, who wait on God, and who share those deeds with the broader people. And then finally, you have the people, the body, the community of faith, celebrating and sharing together. Here we see a story of good news that starts with a messenger, that spreads to the watchman, and that spreads to the whole city and people. And I can almost picture it getting louder and louder and louder as more people join in with celebrating and sharing about the good news that is talked about in this passage. And we know today that the good news that it's really talking about is the good news of Jesus, which we celebrate at Christmas itself when Jesus came into the world. And as we look forward to the day of Christmas Day itself, as we're in this period of Advent, we're called to the role of watchman. We're called to sit back, to stop, to wait, as the period of Advent is all about, to reflect on what God has done and what God is doing, and to look forward to that day where it all came together, where Jesus came into the world. We're called to this period of waiting and watching. But as Christians, we aren't just called to be watchmen. We're called to be messengers. We're called to share the good news of Jesus. Yes, we're called to wait and to watch and to point out what God is doing. And we're also called to be a people, to come together and to celebrate together as we hear the good news once again of Jesus. So let's reflect on what it means today to be a watchman, to wait during this Advent period. But let's not forget that God also calls us to share the good news, to be a messenger to other people. And he also calls us to come together with the rest of the people of God and celebrate what he has done. And we do all of this because, as this passage says, the God of Israel reigns with peace and salvation and comfort. And that's what we celebrate at Christmas with the birth of Jesus.